noise. Okay.
So when we're doing the class, it'd probably be helpful if we mute all the microphones unless you want to ask a question. And then, you know, you can unmute and interrupt and ask a question, or you could put the question in the chat box. There's a little chat icon at the bottom of the screen in the center there, and that would allow you to post a question in a chat box on the side. Okay, so shall we get started? Okay, so first of all, I want to welcome everybody to our Zoom class. I'm sorry we're not meeting in person, especially I think for the first session or two. It's good to be all together in the same room to see each other, but at least we can see some of ourselves on the Zoom thing. If you haven't used Zoom before, which, you know, by now probably most people are used to Zoom, there's an icon up at the top right that has a bunch of checks, little boxes, and that's gallery view, so you can see everybody all at once. Or if you prefer to see the speaker view, you can switch to speaker view, and then whoever's talking is in the center of your screen. As I mentioned just a minute ago, there's at the bottom of the screen, there's a little balloon that says chat. And if you click on that, you can open a little chat box to the right where you can ask questions. I recommend everybody mute themselves for now. Looks like most people have. And if you want to interrupt and ask a question, if I assume that you know a word or a term, or sometimes that happens, I try not to do that. But if something, you missed something, you didn't understand something, feel free to unmute, ask me to go back and explain that. And as Jennifer Rosenzweig just pointed, Jennifer Rosenzweig is our program director and she's monitoring this. The handout for today is in the chat box if you want to download it. We sent all the handouts by email as attachments, but if you didn't get them, they've been all combined into one PDF file, which is now available on our website. At the end of this class, Jennifer is going to show you a tour of our website so you can find what you need, and also to help you get set up for the High Holy Days, which are coming up soon. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to share screen and I'm going to pull up that handout. And there it is. You should be able to see it now. Everybody see it? You can say yes. Yeah, okay. So what we did was we took all the different handouts that were in separate documents that we attached as an email and combined them all into one big PDF file. So I'm going to kind of run through it right now just to show you what's in the handout. And then there's 26 pages, as you can see. And then we're going to go back to the top and talk about the things we need to talk about today. So the first 2 pages of the handout are the class schedule. And I put the numbers here are the number of class sessions. So if it's a 3 blue stars like this, that just means it's a special event. It's not a class. And the special event is usually a holiday, which is in red. And I don't remember what I did with green and blue, but whatever. I tried to make some color distinctions there just to make it interesting. So these are the holidays that are coming up, and these are the class sessions, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So today we're talking about an overview of conversion to Judaism. There's no Hebrew class today, no Hebrew class next week. We take a break for the holidays, and then we will have a special session Tuesday night. We might have to change that. I saw something else on my calendar pop up at 7 o'clock on Tuesday. I'll definitely let you know. I do need to sneak in an extra class to talk about Sukkot and the rest of the calendar before Sukkot happens on October 3rd. So somewhere in that week, we will have another class, and I'll let you know about that. Then comes all the other topics, which I think are important to know about Judaism. This over here, Worldwide Wrap, One of the things we do in Jewish prayer on weekdays is wear tefillin, which are little leather boxes, which I'll describe later in the class, in another class session. Normally we have for our congregants an opportunity for everybody to come together on a Sunday morning to put on tefillin. This year, because of the pandemic, we don't know what's going to happen. So that's why I put a question mark. Probably won't happen. Normally, we also have scholar and residents come in once or twice a year for a weekend. We had Josh Culp, who's a friend of mine and a colleague in Israel. We're probably not going to have that. We had planned to do it for this Shabbat. He may not come, in which case we'll do something else. Yom Limud is a Jewish day of learning in the city. The whole Jewish community of Houston comes together to learn, usually in one place. There are 3 large synagogues in town. Ours is one of them, Beth Yeshurun, and then 2 large Reform synagogues, Beth Israel and Emmanuel. And usually the 3 of us rotate where the Yom Limud event is held. This year it's going to be all online. So strange things this year, but that's how it is. Anyway, it should be a lot of fun. More about that later. Purim is another Jewish holiday. We normally have a big Purim carnival at Beth Yeshurun. I'm guessing that may not happen, but if we did do it, it was scheduled for February 28th. Normally, the Jewish community gets together for a big kosher chili cook-off. That also happens at Beth Yeshurun. Question mark, probably not going to happen this year. A lot of sad things we're going to miss this year. But anyway, Passover, Yom HaShoah is Holocaust Remembrance Day, Israel's Memorial Day and Independence Day. And toward the end, the last day here, May 16th, I scheduled, hopefully we'll be able to get different groups at Beth Yeshurun, like our Sisterhood, our 100 Jewish Men, and other organizations to talk about what they do so you can get involved in our congregation in different ways. We also have an active social action committee. So social justice, kind of social action activities. Okay, so that's kind of the schedule for the year. These are the books I highly, highly recommend for the class. I only have 26 hours to talk about Judaism. As we're going to see throughout the year, there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to learn, more than I can cover. So I recommend reading also these books. Anita Diamond has written a book on choosing a Jewish life, which is about the process of converting. She also wrote a book, if you like her writing style, about living a Jewish life, which is sort of basic Judaism. And she wrote a book about having a baby, the New Jewish Baby book, and about getting married, the Jewish Wedding book. She's kind of got a little niche for herself, and she writes well, so you might enjoy that. Harold Kushner is a conservative rabbi, unorthodox, and this is a nice short read book to life that he wrote about what it is to be Jewish and how the calendar and life cycle and so on all sort of reinforces the Jewish way of looking at the world. He's a great writer. His first book is the most famous book. It was When Bad Things Happen to Good People. And it's, again, not orthodox about that subject. He specifically did not call it Why Bad Things Happen to Good People because he didn't want to address that question directly. He doesn't think that's a helpful question. The question for religious people is not why bad things happen, but what do we do about it? So that was his book, was When Bad Things Happen to Good People. Just a little background about him. He had a child who was born with a disease called progeria. If you haven't heard of that disease, it's a disease where children age prematurely. So he watched his young son start to look like an old man and then die. And that's what prompted him to write the book When Bad Things Happen to Good People. And then since then, he's written many, many other books. They're all really good. He's a very thoughtful writer. But To Life is his book about Judaism generally. George Robinson is not a rabbi. He's just like a journalist, a writer. He did a lot of good research and work, and he writes well. And his book about Judaism is Essential Judaism. It's a blue book. I chose it because it has a lot of information in it. It's a thick book. There are a lot of introduction to Judaism books out there. Yes, somebody's showing a picture of it there, Michaela. There it is. Uh, and I chose it again. This is a book that you want to have on your shelf because it's a book you can go back and refer to later. It has a lot of good information. It's about life cycle calendars, Jewish beliefs, the typical introduction to Judaism book. The Jewish Study Bible is by Oxford University. Interestingly enough, this is the only English language, single volume, modern Jewish commentary on the Bible. I know it's our Bible. We started it. We've got dozens and dozens and dozens of commentaries out there, but most of them were written from a sort of more traditional perspective. And since the Enlightenment and since modern Bible scholarship, we've started to study the Bible differently. And there are now many books about the Bible written from a Jewish perspective in modern terms, but this is the only single volume, sort of line by line commentary that will take you through the Bible from this modern Jewish perspective. So that's why I recommend that. Jewish Literacy is written by a modern Orthodox rabbi, Joseph Telushkin, who's also written a lot of books. I like everything he writes, but this is his book about Judaism. He wrote it for Jews, but it's good for non-Jews also, for people who are interested in becoming Jewish. His idea was, and the reason for the title is, as a person who'd been involved in Jewish education for decades, he realized that many adult Jews don't really understand what it means to be Jewish. Right? They grew up, they had their bar mitzvah at 13, and then they kind of dropped out. And, you know, what can you teach a 13-year-old about an adult religion? So, or history. So what he did was he sat down and said, if I wanted the average Jew, not Orthodox, not whatever, just the average Jew to be Jewishly literate, to understand what our history is and what makes Judaism Judaism, what are the things I'd want that adult to know? And so he wrote a list of like 300 topics, and then he wrote an essay of about about a page and a half on each one. So Jewish literacy covers more than Robinson in scope. He's talking about history, important people to know about, important things in the Bible, all kinds of other things. But when he gets to talking about Shabbat or the other holidays, it's necessarily not as detailed, right? So not as deep, but much broader in scope, which is why I included that book. And finally, Samuel Sandmel, there's a lot of books out on this subject about describing the differences between Judaism and Christianity. This is one of them, written by a rabbi who taught at the Reform Seminary in Cincinnati for many years, We Jews and Jesus. There are a number of other books. If you prefer a different book, that's okay. This is just one that I kind of recommended. So these are the kind of the prices that are listed roughly at Amazon. We have a number of them at Beth Yeshurun. And if you want to venture into the building sometime, there's not too many people in the building these days, you can make an appointment with Lisa and she can sell them to you from our bookcase, or you can buy them from Amazon directly, about the same price. So it's up to you. This is what I'm going to come back to in a minute. This is my talk for today. Hopefully I won't spend too much more time on introductory things, and we'll come back to this outline. This is I kind of sat down and thought about what would I want you all to get out of the program. And so this is what I wrote as goals for what I would hope you could accomplish during the program. Sort of requirements, attending the class, taking the Hebrew course, or at least getting an introduction to Hebrew, doing the terms list, which we'll show you in a minute, attending services. The more of these things you do, the more comfortable you'll feel as being part of the Jewish community. And that's the important thing, right? At the end of this program, we want you to feel comfortable being part of our group. And if you do, the more of these things you do, the more comfortable you'll feel, the more people you'll know, the more people will know you, and the more comfortable you'll be being part of the community. Again, with the COVID virus right now, it's hard to meet in person, and that's making it hard for everybody, including our regular members. Hopefully we'll get past this and we can meet in person, and that would be the ideal thing, of course. Finally, here's a journal. One thing that many people find very helpful is journaling, sort of keeping a record of your life. If you like the idea of journaling, or if you want to try it out, I kind of recommend it as part of the process for converting, sort of thinking through as the weeks go on, your reaction to things that you learn in class, experiences you're having in your life. And at least for the first couple sessions, I recommend some topics that you might want to think about in writing a journal. This is not a requirement per se, but because I don't need to see it. Some people have done it and showed me their journals, which are amazing. And I imagine many other people don't do journaling, but so it's really up to you. Again, the more you do in a sort of a way that you're comfortable and familiar with doing, the more comfortable you'll feel being part of the Jewish community. Here is the terms list. So I created, kind of like Joseph Telushkin did, I created a list of terms that I thought Jewishly literate people ought to know. The truth is that most Jews probably only know about 2/3 of the terms on this list. But what I thought was, I did this for two reasons. I created this list for you for two reasons. First of all, it's a way to sort of, because I don't try to capture, I don't have multiple choice tests. I don't have, intensive Q&A to make sure you learn certain specific facts that we talk about in the class. So this is a way for you to self-monitor, to capture whether you feel like you're capturing a certain basic element of facts of what the different holidays and beliefs are. And I capture them in the sense of terms, right? Words that are good to know, but they kind of capture a lot of the facts and details of the holidays, for instance. There's the holidays, and then prayer and synagogue terms, and things about Jewish history. So if you feel comfortable knowing these things, and many of them are in Joseph Telushkin's book, for instance, you will feel like you have a basic knowledge of Judaism. That's the first thing. And the second thing, the reason I put it in sense of terms is because Jews often talk about these terms. And if they use a word and you don't know what it means, that kind of, again, might make you feel uncomfortable. But if they use the word and say, oh, that was on my terms list, I recognize it, then you'll feel more comfortable and say, oh, yes, I know what you're talking about. And it's kind of like a code language. It's like with any group of people. We all have our own code language, and our code language is usually based on words like these that you will recognize, and then you'll feel you're up to speed with the group. So this is something, again, for you. I don't check to see that you've done them, although I'm happy to look at them if you'd like to show me your terms list. You can now Google most of these, by the way. It's a pretty simple process with the internet. You can Google these terms and find the answers to them also. It just helps you to feel more comfortable being part of the Jewish people. This is a vocabulary list that was produced by our movement, the United Synagogue, and many of the terms that were just in that list are here with short answer questions. So this is a crib sheet. It doesn't include all the terms, but many of the simple terms are found in this handout. This is the one thing that is definitely required. This is the essay questions. So at the end of the class, we schedule your conversion ceremony. And when you have before the conversion ceremony, I ask you to write these essay questions. After finishing this class, these should not be difficult. If you're not a writer, you can write a short amount. If you feel like you like to write, you can write a large amount. However much you want to write, whatever you are comfortable with. But you really should be able to answer these questions. Why you want to be Jewish? What do you think is appealing and persuasive? How do you plan to continue your Jewish life in the future? How has your life changed as a result of learning about Judaism? And so on. So these 7 questions you will have to answer by the end. Those are the essay questions. Here is a general article about converting to Judaism from MJL. I believe this link is active on the handout, so you can click the link and go to the website. MJL is My Jewish Learning, and that website is a really, really useful website, I think, for learning a lot of basic stuff about Judaism. They have good writers. They select from the spectrum of Jewish people, Reform, Conservative, Orthodox. Lots of different viewpoints are expressed, and this is not necessarily written for non-Jews. This is mostly written for Jewish people, again, who aren't so Jewishly literate, to help them to become literate. That's what My Jewish Learning was written for, but it's very good for you as well. So this was an article from My Jewish Learning, the website, how to convert to Judaism, and it talks about the process and the steps involved. So that's sort of a summary of Anita Diamond's book, maybe, let's say. And again, it has links. They've done a really good job linking their articles to other articles. This is the, I try when I give a handout that's taken from the internet, I try to give you the URL so you can go check it out yourself. And here it is, the URL for the conversion process. And then they also have, which you can sign up for, an email list for people interested in becoming Jewish. You click on this link and they'll be sending you a weekly email about things to know as you go through the process of deciding to be Jewish. This next handout, we're almost done, is a declaration that you make at the ceremony where you choose to be Jewish. So I'm going to talk about how becoming Jewish is kind of like becoming a naturalized citizen of the United States. And one of the last steps of, if you were born somewhere else and you move to America and you want to become a US citizen, the last step is go as a ceremony where you appear before a judge and you sort of take an oath saying you promise to be a good citizen. And then the judge declares you a citizen and you get your papers. And it's kind of similar for becoming Jewish. So this is the oath, so to speak, or the declaration that you make that you want to be Jewish, live a Jewish life, and have a Jewish home. So this is, I kind of gave it to you up front so you know what it's going to say. This is kind of the standard form that we use. You say it before the judges, the sort of the lay court, Jewish court, and then you sign it, and then the three people who are sitting on the court sign saying, yeah, we heard you say this, and it's dated. So that's what that is. And this last thing we'll save for the last. I want to talk about that at the end. So let's go back to the top and talk about this class. Okay. So, so in the first few handouts, I usually have a handout like this for each class session where I outline what I want to talk about. And at the top, I sometimes had what I suggested as the reading for that class topic from the books I recommended. Of course, Choosing a Jewish Life is about the process of converting, so you want to read the whole book. You don't have to read it all today, but anyway, that's the background reading for today's class. And then To Life, I recommended these opening pages of the book To Life as the sort of introduction to Judaism. So today, I want to start with a drash. A drash is a Hebrew word which is from the rabbinic period of Judaism. That's from 2,000 years ago. So one of the first things, let me just say this about, we're going to come back to this in a second. There. I'll come back to the outline in a minute. Just wanted to see my face for a little bit. And one of the first things probably it's good to know, most people come from the Christian background in America who are thinking about becoming Jewish. And so as Christians, you would be aware that there is an Old Testament and a New Testament. Of course, in Jewish tradition, we don't have a New Testament. That's not part of our literature. And so what's called the Old Testament in Christianity, we just call the Bible. But Judaism didn't stop with the Bible. So what happened was the Bible was interpreted by scholars and sages for many centuries after it was written. And about the time that Christianity is getting started, in those first couple centuries of the Christian era, Jews are developing a literature of interpretation of the Bible written by who we call the rabbis. They're the rabbis of the Mishnaic period, the first 2 centuries of the Common Era. And one of the things that these rabbis did was they would make interpretations of the Bible that are not always obvious. They're not the plain meaning of the Bible. And they intentionally did that. In my opinion, they were doing what rabbis and even preachers and teachers do today. And that is to take the Word of God, the Bible, and then try and bring it up to modern times. What does it mean to us today? How do we understand this in a way that's meaningful in our world? That's what the rabbis did. But when they did it, they were very knowledgeable in Hebrew grammar and language. And so they would often make very playful reinterpretations of the text. They knew it wasn't what the text originally meant, but they were making a sort of a play on words in order to teach something that was meaningful for their congregation in their time. Those interpretations are called midrash. Okay, that's what they called it. And to drash on a text is to create a midrash, a story or an interpretation on what the Bible meant. Now I'm going to tell you the midrash. So the story in the Bible is that God says to Abraham at some point in his life, I want you to leave your father's home, leave the world that you know, and go to a place that I will show you. And I'm going to take you on a journey, and I will make you a great person, the father of a great people. Right? That's in the early chapters of Genesis. The rabbis had a question. Why did God choose Abraham? Why didn't he choose somebody else? And that's not explained in the Bible. And so they made up a story to explain that answer to that question. And so that's what's called a midrash. Did they know for sure this is what happened? No. But they wanted to teach a lesson to the people in their time, and they created a story to tell that, to explain it. Just as a background, you probably know about Aesop's fables. How many people know about Aesop's fables? Right? Yeah. So that was a Greek thing. Greeks often made up stories like Aesop's fables, right? The fox and the grapes, or who knows what. And they do foxes talk? No, foxes don't talk. The Greek people knew that foxes don't talk. They made up the story in order to teach a moral lesson. That's the world that these rabbis are operating in. Everybody's telling stories like this that are not necessarily history, but they're stories that teach an important lesson. So this is the story they told about Abraham. They said, well, Abraham not only lived in a pagan world where everybody believed in many gods, but his father actually made idols for a living. That's what he did for a living. And then he would shop them around door to door like the Fuller Brush man. He would go door to door selling idols. And so one day his father is out selling his idols, and Abraham takes a look at the warehouse of idols in his father's workshop, and he decides to smash them all. He smashes all his father's work, except for the largest idol, in which he puts in the hands of the largest idol a large mallet. His father comes home and sees what happened, right? His whole life is ruined. His occupation is destroyed. And he turns to his son and he said, with, turning red in the face, why did you do this? How could you have ruined my life? And Abraham says to his dad, I didn't do it. He did it. And he points to the idol with the mallet. And his father says, that's ridiculous, son. That idol is made out of stone. I made him myself. I know he doesn't do anything. And so then Abraham says to him, so why do you worship them? Right? And based on that story, they said, that's why God chose Abraham, because he realized how foolish it was to worship idols. What's interesting about that story is it makes for a fascinating metaphor that actually, in some ways, describes human nature. Those of us who have had teenagers know that teenagers frequently smash our idols, right? That's part of the process of growing up, is you re-examine what your parents told you and you start to question everything, which, you know, that's good. That's the process of differentiating. You're becoming your own person. And so now we have a metaphor for that, right? We have this idea of smashing your parents' idols. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? To question your parents, to sort of rethink what you were taught to make sure it makes sense to you. Sometimes your parents make mistakes, right? Prejudices can be passed down from generation to generation that are not based on reality. And it's important to smash those idols. Hopefully, our teenagers, when they grow a little bit older, come back to realize that not everything they thought was foolish was foolish, and they realize on their own that what we were trying to tell them was actually wise. But in any case, we have this metaphor of Abraham smashing his parents' idols. One of the processes, one way to think about becoming Jewish is this idea that you need to sort of break out of a worldview that you were raised in and to think about a different way of thinking about God and the world around you, right? And hopefully that since you've chosen to come into this class, that you will find that this is the worldview that makes a lot of sense to you, and that would sort of reinforce the idea that this is the right home for you. So we often think of people who convert to Judaism as being like Abraham, somebody who left behind a world that he understood or was raised in and took a journey with God to a place he wasn't sure where he was going, but just having faith and trusting that God was going to show him a new world, a new way of looking at things, to develop a new relationship that would be beneficial. And that's kind of, so Abraham is considered like the first Jew by choice. And you all, when you, if you decide to complete the program and convert, you would also become Jews by choice. Some modern Jewish thinkers, by the way, say that every Jew today is a Jew by choice. Because in the modern world, particularly in America, you can do anything you want. You can even be nothing, right? In fact, many religious people say that the most popular group in the country today is the nuns, not the N-U-N-S, but the N-O-N-E-S, right? No religion at all. So choosing to continue to follow the Jewish way of life is a choice, even for people who may have been raised Jewish. But we consider Jews by choice to be like Abraham. I'm going to tell you one more story, and then we're going to look at Maimonides, this other bold-faced thing over here. So Hillel is one of these early rabbis. He's actually of the generation right before Jesus. So he could have been perhaps Jesus' teacher. We have no idea who Jesus' teacher was, but Hillel is, there's several stories told about Hillel in Jewish writings. He is a very liberal, open-minded, welcoming, friendly kind of person. And a pagan, Judaism was somewhat interesting to some pagans in the Roman world. And a pagan comes to Hillel and asks him tells him he'd like to convert to Judaism. He'd like to be Jewish. But he has one condition, that Hillel teach him everything he needs to know about Judaism while he stands on one foot. Well, you know, that's not easy to do, right? How do you teach everything about Judaism while you stand on one foot? It's only going to be a few minutes. That's your elevator speech, we would say today, right? Or your soundbite, or your tweet, maybe. Tweet me what I need to know about Judaism so I can convert. I should mention that this pagan went to Hillel's colleague Shammai first, another teacher at the time, Shammai, who is not known as being quite so friendly, and was a little more rigid and strict. Shammai felt insulted by the question, and according to the Talmud, hit the man over the head with a stick. I don't recommend this, but he was insulted, and he kind of shooed him away from his house. Get out of here! I don't want to talk to you. Forget about it. So he goes down the street and he talks to Hillel. And he says, Hillel, teach me what I need to know while I stand on one foot. So Hillel says, okay, I can do that. And he says, what you find hateful, don't do to your neighbor. The rest is commentary. Go and study. Right? So 3 sentences, right? What you find hateful, don't do to your neighbor. The rest is commentary. Go and study. So this highlights, first of all, Hillel's open-mindedness and his willingness to work with people from where they are. It also highlights what he felt was the most important thing about Judaism, which is be a good person. But he also said, go and study, right? That's not everything you really need to know. You need to learn more. So my class is going to be a little more involved than Hillel, right? I've got 26 hours of teaching here or something like that. A little more involved than Hillel. But there's always more to learn. I still have more to learn as well. But you know, I would say it's a good summary of Judaism, that the essence of Judaism really is trying to train us to be good. Not just to be good between each other, to create a better society, a better family, a better community, a better world, but also trying to help us to engage with God, to have a deep and meaningful relationship with God, right? So it's kind of both of those aspects. And the rest is commentary. The rest is how we go about doing that. Okay, now I want to skip to that last handout that I skipped before, Maimonides. Remember about Abraham being the first Jew by choice. So you may encounter, while you're in the process of converting and perhaps after you're converting, there are, you know, in every group of people, there are people who are not so nice. And I'm sad to say that that includes Jews, but that's the way it is. So there are some Jews who are still prejudiced. They have their own prejudices. And how am I going to do this? There we go. I'll do this here. Okay. So they have their own prejudices, and I can't help that. They're just crazy people. What I can tell you is ignore them. You don't need them. The overwhelming majority of Jews, and certainly the overwhelming majority of people at Beth Yeshurun, welcome you and are thrilled to pieces to have you join our community and our people. And what I want to show you is that that's not just a modern idea, but that actually goes back centuries. And so I'm going to quote here from a scholar named Maimonides. I'm going to refer to him many times during the class because he was brilliant and I like most of what he has to say. Most, you know, don't agree with everything, but he did say a lot of wonderful things. So Maimonides wrote a lot of books, and I'll talk more about him later, but he was known as a brilliant scholar in the 12th century, so about 900 years ago now. He lived in Egypt, in a Muslim country, and so because he was brilliant and was well known throughout the Jewish world, Jewish people from all over the world would write questions and send them to him, asking for his sage advice. And I'm going to look at 2 of those questions that were sent to him, or actually 2 answers that he gave to 2 people. So this is a letter he wrote to Obadiah. Everybody can see, yes? Obadiah the proselyte. Again, this is a person who's living in a Muslim country, and he wants to know, you see, you asked me if you too are allowed to say in the blessings and prayers, we have certain prayer formulas. Can I say our God and God of our ancestors, God of our fathers? I mean, I'm converting to Judaism. Abraham wasn't biologically my father, let's say. You sanctified us through your commandments and commanded us. Did you command us? Can we say that God commanded us? I mean, I chose Judaism. You have distinguished us from all other people. Can I say that? I joined Judaism late in life. So can I say these formulas, these prayer formulas? Am I really part of the Jewish people, he's asking. And Maimonides' answer to all those questions is yes. You may say all of this in the prescribed order and not change it in the least. In the same way as every Jew by birth says his blessings and prayers, you too shall bless and pray alike. Whether you are alone, you're praying by yourself, or you're praying with the community, right? You might think that if I'm praying in the community, I have to use the words the community is praying, but maybe when I'm by myself, I should change the words. No, when you're by yourself, you are a full and complete Jew, and you say everything just the way every other Jew says it. And the reason for this is that Abraham, our father, taught people, opened their minds, and revealed to them the truth and the unity of God. And ever since then, whoever adopts Judaism and confesses to the unity of the divine name, as it is prescribed in the Torah, is counted among the disciples of Abraham, our father, peace be upon him. And these men are Abraham's household, and he it is who converted them to righteousness. Therefore, you should also pray, our God and God of our ancestors, because he is your father. And since you have come under the wings of the divine presence and confessed the Lord, no difference exists between you and us, and all the miracles done for us have also been done for you. There's no difference between you and us. All right? So you are completely and totally a Jew. Don't consider your origin as inferior. While we are descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, you derive from him through whose word the world was created. You're like directly connected to God. You have maybe better relation than Jews who are born Jewish, which actually psychologically I might say is somewhat true, because you actually thought this through as an adult, whereas many Jews kind of born into it may not have really thought much about it. So that's the first question. The second question was also from a person who lived in an Islamic country. And he apparently was being taught by a Jewish teacher in the country where he was living, the city where he was living. And he got into an argument with his teacher about whether Islam is a monotheistic religion. Do Muslims believe in only one God like Jews? And this person, who had converted from Islam and knew Islam as a Muslim before he became Jewish, insisted that even though he preferred being Jewish, Islam is definitely a monotheistic religion. And his teacher said no, and called him a fool. So he wasn't going to take no for an answer, and he wrote to the most brilliant sage of his generation, Maimonides in Egypt, and he asked him, who's right? Am I right, or is my teacher right? Now, here, before I read what Maimonides wrote, I just want to say Maimonides was very brilliant and did not tolerate people who were not as brilliant as him, which is to say, he didn't have patience for many people. And he writes very, very pungently. So that's kind of one of the things that's fun about him, is reading how he writes in such strident language. So here's what he writes. When your teacher called you a fool for denying that Muslims are idolaters, he sinned grievously, and it is fitting that he ask your pardon, though he be your master. One thing I should interject here, for those of you who are Star Wars fans, Judaism was taught very much in the way that Jediism was taught in Star Wars. That is, you have a master and a disciple, right? A Padawan, right? And a master only takes on one or two disciples at a time and really works very closely with them. And your master, you can't contradict. He is the master in the world that Maimonides lives in. You can't contradict your master. He knows everything, and you have to be very deferential to him. It's a very clear, distinct relationship. But here Maimonides is going to turn that on its head. That's why I had to tell you that, right? It's fitting that he ask your pardon, though he be your master. Then let him fast and weep and pray, and maybe he will find forgiveness. Was he intoxicated that he forgot the 33 passages in the law that requires us about strangers to treat the stranger nicely? You're supposed to treat strangers nicely. It's mentioned 33 times in the Torah. Be nice to strangers because we were strangers in Egypt. And he must have been out of his mind to have ignored those 33 passages. Even if he had been in the right and you were in the error, it was his duty to be kind to you. How much more so when the truth is with you and he was in error. And when he was discussing whether a Muslim is an idolater, he should have been cautious not to lose his temper. Apparently he got quite angry at this person. He should have been careful not to lose his temper with a proselyte of righteousness and put him to shame. For our sages have said, he who gives way to his anger shall be esteemed in your eyes as an idolater, right? This is Maimonides' a brilliant way, turning everything on its head. Not only was your teacher wrong, not only does he have to beg forgiveness and maybe he'll be forgiven, but when he got angry with you, he himself became an idolater. And he was talking about Muslims being idolaters, which is nonsense. But in arguing with you, he himself became an idolater himself. We are commanded to honor and fear our parents. We're ordained to hearken to the prophets. A man may honor and fear and obey without loving. But in the case of strangers, we're bidden to love them with all the force of our heart's attention. And he called you a fool? Astounding. A man who left his father and mother, forsook his birthplace, his country, and its power, right? Islam was very powerful at the time, and attached himself to this lowly, despised, and enslaved race. We were not doing well. Better in Muslim world, frankly, than in the Christian world, but still not very successful in either world. You reckon, but nevertheless recognize the truth and righteousness of this people's law and cast the things of this world from this heart. Such a one is to be called a fool. God forbid, not witless, but wise has God called your name. You disciple of our father Abraham, playing on that midrash, who left his fathers and his kindred and inclined Godward. He who blessed Abraham will bless you, will make you worthy to behold all the consolations destined for Israel. And in all the good that God will do for us, he will do for you, because the Lord has promised good to Israel. So I just wanted to share with you at the beginning of the class this kind of emphatic statement from Maimonides about how we are supposed to honor, respect, and love people who choose to join the Jewish people, and that you are considered fully Jewish when you convert to Judaism, despite what other Jews, some Jews, unfortunately, not many, but some may have crazy prejudices, but despite whatever they think, it's pretty clear you are considered completely Jewish and even perhaps superior because you chose Judaism as an adult after thinking it through. Okay, so now let's go back to the top. I don't have a lot of time left, unfortunately, to cover everything else I wanted to say. We covered part one. What does it mean to be a Jew? Okay, so first of all, we are a very small people. There's about 15 million, maybe 16 million Jews in the world out of about 7.5 billion people living in the world. That makes us about 1/5 of 1% of the world's population. So we are a very small people. You know, people think there's more of us because we seem to, for some reason, get a lot of attention in news media. I'm not sure why, but there's really, we're not a very large people. We believe we're the origin of monotheism and the parent of Christianity and Islam, which came later. So we take our tradition back to the time of Abraham and Moses, which obviously predated Christianity and Islam. So we think we're the origin of this way of looking at the world. We are sometimes called the people of the book. That comes from a concept that the Muslims had. And by that, they meant that we had a covenant with God through a revealed source, a book. They respected that, although we were considered inferior to Islam in the past. Nevertheless, we had a position of more importance than regular pagans because we were people of the book. We had a relationship with God. I would just amend that to say we are the people of the library because we don't have just the Bible. As I'll point out in a later class session, we have now thousands of books out about Jews and Judaism. We had, even before the printing press, hundreds of books and commentaries, interpretations. So really, Judaism is a people of writing and reading and learning. And learning is a hallmark of our tradition. We're a people and a religion. Unlike perhaps some other religions or people, way of how they conceive of themselves, we think of ourselves as not just a religion. It's not about your personal belief. It's not just about your personal relationship with God. It's also about being part of a community, part of a people with a heritage, a history, and with Jewish communities around the world. So in that sense, again, it's kind of like becoming a naturalized citizen of the United States. You're joining the people. And perhaps an analogy to Maimonides, who said, you know, you say the blessings the same way every other Jew says them because your father is now Abraham. I would say the analogy to that is Americans celebrating Thanksgiving today. You know, my ancestors came here at the beginning of the 1900s. They had nothing to do with the Mayflower or the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. And we're not part of the first Thanksgiving that we remember, but we're Americans and we celebrate Thanksgiving because that's American history. And as Americans, we partake of American culture. And the same thing for people who are naturalized or convert or become part of the Jewish people. You celebrate all the holidays, and they're your holidays and your history because you've joined our people. So as a people, we have a common language, which is Hebrew, which is why the Hebrew class is important to this class, that you at least understand the Hebrew alphabet and hopefully can read some of the words on the page. You may not be able to translate them. Don't worry, most Jews cannot translate the prayer book. Most Jews in America can't. They learn enough Hebrew to be able to sound out the words and to sing the prayers together, which is important. But they rely on the English translation in the prayer book to really understand what the prayers say. So if that's, but it helps you to be comfortable praying from the prayer book when most of the prayers are going to be sung or recited in Hebrew. So that is the language of the Jewish people for over 3,000 years and continues to unite Jews throughout the world. If you go to Italy or Spain or certainly Israel or England or France, you can open a prayer book and you'll see the Hebrew words are virtually the same in every country. The calendar, we have a common calendar, holidays, we have a common food. So just as Italians, you might say eat pasta and pizza, and the French have French cuisine and Spanish have Spanish cuisine, Mexicans have Mexican cuisine. Jews who have lived all over the world sort of adopted the cultural cuisine of the places they lived in, but they overlaid it with Jewish food requirements, which are kashrut, keeping kosher, right? So we won't have pork in our enchiladas or whatever, pork in our tacos. So there is a certain kind of dietary similarity of Jews throughout the world, although today not all Jews keep kosher. Nevertheless, that is sort of the identity of Jewish food. We have a common literature, starting with the Bible, and then the commentaries on the Bible, and the legal codes and interpretations of those codes, the Midrash, the stories that we tell, and other poetry. There's a whole body of literature. So just as English-speaking people have English literature that keeps in common, Jews have Jewish literature that we share in common as well. And we have rites of life cycle also, like ceremonies at birth, marriage, divorce, burial, etc. Those unite us together. And also as a people, we have a common land, which is the land of Israel. So when you think about what makes Italians Italian, they speak the Italian language. They might have special holidays for Italy. They certainly have Italian food, certain Italian literature, some perhaps customs, and they live or come from Italy, right? And similarly, we have Hebrew, we have our calendar of holidays, we keep kosher, we have the Jewish literature, Jewish rituals, and our homeland is Israel. That's what makes us a people. But we're also a religion with our own special relationship to God based on our tradition, our way of life. We see law as a good thing. I'll talk about that later. So it's kind of both of those things. I'm running out of time. Let me just say one thing about chosenness. Many people misunderstand this idea, including Jews. Some Jews think, oh, we're chosen, that makes us special, we're better. Certainly some non-Jews, particularly anti-Semites, think the Jews think they're better, they're chosen, and get all angry about it. I would say this about that. I give an analogy. I'm going to give an analogy here, and I guess I'm going to have to end with this analogy because I'm running out of time. So you have a wealthy man who has a big house, and it has many rooms. And in each room, he has too many rooms for his children, so he's got extra rooms. And so he fills his rooms with art collections. And he has one room where he devotes to his Michelangelo sculptures. And he has another room where he has his Rembrandt paintings. And he has another room where he has his precious gem collection. And another room where he has his Fabergé egg collection. If you don't know what those are, you can Google it later. Fabergé eggs was a thing. Maybe it still is. Anyway, so he has a separate room for each of his different kinds of art. And he can take you through each room, and he can describe each item in the room and how brilliant it is and why he finds it so interesting and so attractive and so special and unique, and how pleasurable, what an excitement he gets from it and each thing that he has. And then if you ask him, so which room do you like the best? He would say, well, I can't decide. I mean, I love them all. I love them all equally, but they're all different. I get a different feeling in every room. And so that's how I see God, right? God has lots of people in the world, billions of people, and each of them have their own faith tradition, their own path to understanding God. And if you ask God, who do you love the best? He'd say, well, I love them all, but I love them all for who they are, their uniqueness, their specialness. What makes us chosen is we are chosen to have our unique relationship with God. Now, as a partisan person, I am a conservative rabbi. I think our chosen path to God is brilliant. You can see the books on the shelf behind me. That's a fake background, but it is a real background from my living room. And that's only part of my collection. That's probably a quarter or a fifth of my books. So Judaism has a brilliant tradition with lots and lots of, I mean, whatever your interest is, we have a way to get to God. Because there's been Jewish thinkers for centuries who have thought all these different ways before. And then you get to add your own. It's an amazing way. It's amazing and brilliant path, not only to God, but to living a good life. So I think it's brilliant, but I'm not going to say that other people are in error for doing their own path to God. God loves everybody. We're chosen to follow this path. And if you choose to follow this path, I think you'll be enriched by it. So I guess I'm going to stop here. I want to switch over to Jennifer, who's going to tell you some important things about our website, how to get around in it, and how to deal with the high holidays which are coming. And then if there's any questions after that, I can stay till 10:30 and then I have to go. So Jennifer, why don't you take over?
Sure. All right, I'm going to share my screen because I've got the website up here. And if you weren't on when we first started, my name's Jennifer Rosenzweig, and I'm the program director at Beth Yeshurun. So program director means I have a little bit of a hand in a whole lot of things. So if you ever have questions about anything that's happening, any of our programs, feel free to reach out to me, because if I don't know, I can find you the answer. But let me share my screen here. Okay, can you see the website?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right. This is where I live, is on our website. So I encourage you to go on and really just kind of click on everything and go through all the different links we've got here. There's a lot of information about programs that we're doing, programs that we've done in the past. There's just a lot of information here, but I want to point out a couple of things that I think will be useful for you sort of getting started. If you scroll below the big picture here, there's a player here. So this video player. Everything that we do in the synagogue, in one of our sanctuaries, we live stream it. So services we live stream, If there's some other kind of program, a lot of times we live stream that here as well, and it's right here on our front page. So our Friday night services, our Saturday morning services, we had a program, a lunch program on Friday, like all different kinds of things we'll live stream, and it's right here on our front page. So I would encourage you to watch that, and it will usually tell you kind of what's coming up here, and then, you know, how long you've got to wait. So you know you're in the right place, but it's right here on the front page. So that's a really useful link. I want to show you also our calendar. Our calendar, we're pretty good about keeping up to date, and it's a good way to just kind of see an overview of what's happening in the synagogue. And there's a lot of links here from our calendar so that you can see. It's not beautiful, but there's a lot here. You can, for example, you're in this class this morning, Invitation to Judaism. If I click on that, you can see here's the handouts for the class. Here's the recordings for the previous classes. Here's Rabbi Morgan's email. Like we keep a lot of this stuff on the calendar so that you can find, you know, we've got a program here on Tuesday night. Here's some more information about it, and here's where you would register. So all of this, all of the things that we're doing are on the calendar here. So it's a great way to kind of just have an overview of what's happening. And there's links to most everything to give you some kind of information about, do you need to register, or, you know, is there a handout, all of that kind of stuff. So this is a really good resource for you. So I would start here on the calendar and start with the viewer and watch whatever is happening in the synagogue. Those are great places to start. So let's talk a little bit about high holidays. So up here in the corner is our high holiday link. And this page is going to have everything you need to know about high holidays coming up. The most important thing is going to be this schedule block here. Right now, it's kind of got a high level schedule, but if you click on it again in 2 or 3 days, it's going to have a much more detailed schedule that'll give you approximate sermon times on the different days, and like just a little bit more detail. And as we get even closer, it will actually have links to each one of these things. So our high holiday production, we actually have 3 different services going on at the same time. So as we get closer, we'll actually have links to take you to each one of these things. So this page, this schedule page, is really going to be the place that you're going to want to start to try to sample, you know, some different services, watch some different things. This is where you'll go, and it will take you to that place, to each of the different places on our website where those things will be playing.
Next week, we'll talk about what the different services are, by the way, so you'll have an idea.
Right. So that looks very overwhelming to just scroll down this, and it is kind of overwhelming, but there's a lot of different choices, and I would encourage you definitely to check out each one and see what you think. The other big thing here on our high holiday page for y'all is going to be the prayer books. So there's a different prayer book for the high holidays than there is for, say, Shabbat. And for our members are able to borrow a prayer book from us, and I'm happy to make that available to y'all as well if you're interested. So I'll have Lisa kind of reach out to everybody and ask if you want to borrow one, and then we have several pickup times in the next couple of weeks that everybody can just drive through. You don't even have to get out of the car, drive through, and we'll just hand it to you. But I think the prayer book for the high holidays is really, it's a great resource. There's lots of like interesting readings, and it's just, I think you would really enjoy having the actual book in your hands. I'll also send all of y'all a link to download it if you'd like to have it on a device as well. But if you can come pick up a prayer book, I think you would really enjoy having that with you to watch the services, and all the different services will refer to this prayer book, so you'll be able to follow along. And then you can play around on here as well and find some other things. Not everything is out here yet. We're starting to put more out here this week, but we'll have some, if you have kids, we'll have some resources for kids under digital resources. We're gonna have some special videos for the kids. We're gonna have some things they can download. So we've got some other things here as well. Some of these are just for our members, but most of them are open to everyone.
Can we put them on the list so they can order the meals?
I guess so.
Yeah, I think we're going to be able to put you all in our registry. We're not allowed to advertise to the public, but you're not the public, so I think we can get you access to this. So if you want to order special holiday meals, you can by clicking on that link. We need to
Well,
set
you
that
won't
up.
be able to click on the link just yet because I need to get all of you in the system so that you can, but I may have Lisa gather that information and then I can kind of do it behind the scenes, might be a little easier. So on Tuesday, I'll give Lisa information to send out to y'all for the books or for the meals and that sort of stuff. And you can think about if it's something that you want to participate in. And then the last thing I would point out here, there's a lot of logistics that go with the high holidays, the service times and the websites and the whatever. But this block here, this roadmap to 5781 is the Hebrew year that's coming. This is an email series that we're doing that's all about sort of the spiritual preparation. It's not about the websites and the links and the parking and the tickets. It's none of that logistical stuff. It's all about sort of the spiritual things. So I would encourage you to go through that and take a look at that as well. Sometimes we, in all our planning for the high holidays, we get caught up in the logistics of things and we forget to focus on some of the spiritual. So that's what this it's kind of in blog format here. But I would encourage you to go take a look at that as well. What else that's sort of the highlights on the website. I do want to tell you also, so on the front page here where I showed you this player, almost everything that we broadcast here on our website on the front page, you can also see on our YouTube channel. So I would encourage you to go out to our YouTube channel and subscribe to that. We show these live to YouTube, and there is a wealth of videos out there on YouTube. We basically archive everything. So we have services out there. We have this recording will be out there. All of our adult ed programs, our Tot Shabbats, like our lunch and learns, everything that we do, we record. And so there's all kinds of videos out there, and you could get lost in them, but there's a lot of good stuff.
There's
so
a link to that at the bottom, isn't there?
If you just go to YouTube and search Congregation Beth Yeshurun, there's only one of us. But I can give Lisa that link too, if that'll make it easier. So YouTube has got all of our archive videos there. And anytime we show something live here, it's live on YouTube also. It's also going to be live on Facebook. So if you're a Facebook user, go to our Facebook page and like that, and you'll be able to watch a lot of these programs there. And we're pretty active on Facebook. We promote a lot of the programs that we're doing. I would also encourage you, if you're a Facebook user, to go and friend all of our clergy, because all of our clergy are really active on Facebook as well. So that's just another dimension of getting involved in the synagogue. So I would really encourage you to do that. Can you think of anything else, Robert?
Yeah, do you want to show the link to the learning? Because I think that's another way to get into that.
Oh, yes. Okay. So under learning here, under adult education, this is a previous class here. If you want to look at this view, the complete Sunday schedule, if you click on that, and I think Lisa may have sent you this direct link, but anyway, that's how you navigate it. You can see all of the classes that are going to be happening, the adult ed classes on Sunday morning. And then for each, you can also look at a schedule, which will show you what's coming up, immediately. And we'll have in here also under the upcoming classes, not just the Sunday classes, but there may be some other adult ed type of things. If they're happening during the week, we'll include them here as well. And then you can also see all of the handouts. And if you miss, so for example, like there's the handout for today. And I'm going to scroll down here to one that we have ongoing here. So you can also click on the YouTube channel for each one of these things. If you miss a class, for example, somebody missed today's class, they'll be able to go back to the YouTube channel for the Invitation to Judaism class and then watch this recording. So if there's something that you miss, or you're late and you missed something, or you want to just review something again, you'll always be able to go back to our YouTube channel to get that, and your handouts will always be here. So that's under learning and adult education here. All of these things are also going to be on our calendar, like I showed you. Invitation to Judaism is here on the calendar. And so from here, you'll also be able to get to the handouts and to the YouTube channel. So we try to make it where you can get where you want to go no matter where you click. We try to link everything together so that you can find things pretty easily. I'd say that's the basics, but I would really encourage you to go and sort of click through each of these things and read a little about our clergy, read about some of these programs that we have that are ongoing things, all sorts of things. There's a lot of good information out here on our website. You can get lost clicking, but I would encourage you to do it. Anything else you can think of, Rabbi?
No, I think that pretty well covers it. Does anybody have any questions for us? No? Okay.
We overwhelmed you with information.
A lot of information. Okay, so so next week what we're going to talk about is the High Holy Days, and I will talk about a little of the differences between the services so you can have an idea of what you may want to go check out. Also, I'll talk about what makes the High Holiday services different from the rest of the year, and a little about the prayer book, which is different also from the rest of the year. So all those things we'll talk about next week. And again, it'll probably go a little bit past 10 o'clock like it did this week. So that's about it. So if there's no other questions, we'll conclude for today and welcome you all to come back next week. Thank you for coming.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.